episode of the BioHub. Today, we're joined by a top leader in the biotech space, Alison Finger. Alison brings more than 3 decades of experience driving strategy, commercialization, and growth across some of the most innovative companies. She's currently the COO at Vicero Bio, where she oversees operations, leads strategic initiatives to advance the next generation of immuno-oncology programs. Previously, Alison served as CCO at Bluebird Bio, where she helped bring the company's first cell and gene therapy products to market, and has also held global leadership roles at BMS. So join us today as we'll talk through Alison's journey, mentorship, as well as transitioning from a commercial to an operating role. So Alison, thanks so much for coming on. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. So look, let's dive into a little bit about you then. So can you talk us through your journey and what inspired you to pursue a career in the biotech industry?
My path was not really traditional. I was a liberal arts major in college, and I began my career in advertising. But when I was in advertising, I found myself more interested in my client's business than the business of advertising itself. And so I went back to business school to Duke University to get my MBA. And at Duke, one of the research strengths is decision sciences. And I found that really fascinating because I think it's a core strength of business management. I had the fortune to join Bristol-Myers Squibb as a summer intern, working in the consumer medicines group. And then they made me an offer to come back full-time. And so I joined BMS full-time after I graduated from Duke. I had the good fortune of being there for over 21 years, and I got to run different parts of the business and launch 8 products. I ran different therapeutic areas, including virology, neuroscience, and hematology oncology. And I also had the opportunity to live in Australia and New Zealand for a couple of years and run the business down there. So great experiences. I got to learn from some of the very best in drug development. And then in 2015, I moved into biotech, where I joined, as you noted, Bluebird Bio as chief commercial officer. And I was brought on to build out the organization from a clinical stage company to a fully integrated company. And that was absolutely fascinating. Now I'm working with a new company called Vicero Bio, and I'm also serving on company boards. So I have a portfolio of really interesting businesses that I'm involved with. And I'd say that, what's really fantastic about getting to work in biopharma is the industry lets me work with brilliant people from diverse fields who are changing the world. And it challenges me every day. It challenges me intellectually. And it just provides deep satisfaction of knowing our work is advancing patient care. So I guess, from starting out in advertising and a liberal arts major, I ended up right where I belong.
Very good. And can you share the origin story behind Vicero Bio and the inspiration behind its founding?
Yeah, of course. So Vicero was founded on groundbreaking technology from Chuck Shoemaker's lab at Tufts University. Chuck is a pioneer in single domain antibody research, and he published seminal work on this technology back in 2007. VHH antibodies, sometimes called nanobodies, are structurally different from monoclonal antibodies. They're smaller fragments with very high affinity and are highly stable. And using Tufts' proprietary screening methodology, we can optimize for potency, achieving femtomolar potency with our lead program. So Vicero's founder, Vikram Kansra, whom I overlapped with at BMS, so that's how we connected, recognized the immense potential of Dr. Shoemaker's proprietary methodology and licensed this technology. And we have applications across many different disease areas, but we're focused on solving the limitations of monoclonal antibody therapy in solid tumors. So that's where we're squarely focused. Immuno-oncology, particularly checkpoint inhibitors, as many know, has been a game changer in cancer therapy. And combination IO therapy has proven to particularly effective in many different solid tumor indications. But the potency of combination therapy also comes with increased grade 3 and 4 immune-related adverse events. And so many patients can't get the full benefit of this combination therapy. Our VINCOBODYs have the potential to offer the similar potency without inducing these high toxicity rates due to their structural differences from monoclonal antibodies. And that's why we say that Vicero provides combination IO efficacy without constraint.
Very good. And you sort of went into the pipeline a little bit then, but maybe just to be more specific, how's the lead program coming along? And then I know you guys are working towards a Series A round at the moment. How is that coming along as well? Yeah, don't worry about it.
Our preclinical data is compelling. In a double knock-in mouse model, we have demonstrated better safety at doses up to 12 times greater than standard of care, the standard of care comparator of pembrolizumab and ipilimumab. So we're very excited about that. And we've also shown complete tumor regression at 5 mg per kg, which is highly potent, and continued tumor suppression after rechallenge. Our cyno PK studies demonstrated that our estimated human equivalent dose will be just 1 milligram flat dosed sub-Q. So this is a very compelling emerging product profile, and pending funding, we're ready to advance this product into IND in less than 12 months. So as you noted, we're actively in the market for our Series A raise, and we're encouraged by the interest that we're generating. We're having a number of conversations. We're also having ongoing conversations with potential strategic investors. So as we all know, the economic environment is a little bit tough right now, and it can be challenging, but we're enthusiastic about the progress we're making.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I speak to so many companies that are in a slightly different situation where it's just, really struggling to get any sort of funds in. So good to hear that you guys are making progress. And then just back to you. So you've predominantly been in commercial roles for the bulk of your career. How did you find that transition to be more of an operating role? And can you give us some background on a typical day for you as well?
Yes, typical days aren't typical, but so I spent 21 years at BMS in commercial roles or business roles. But as you progress in this function, it evolves into general management. And so I had the opportunity to run multifunctional teams, developing strategy and overseeing execution and delivering on the P&L. And I was fortunate to lead many different parts of BMS, including global development teams, franchises, and was managing director of BMS Australia and New Zealand, which I already mentioned. And then after BMS, I moved into biotech, heading up commercial for Bluebird Bio. But this role involved as much company building and establishing operations in Europe and the US as it did commercial work. So in reality, I've actually been in operating roles for most of my career. What's unique today is that I'm focused now on company formation, which is a new area for me, and it's really exciting. So you asked what most of my days look like. Most of my time these days is focused on business development and fundraising, networking, and just talking to people and getting out there as much as possible to let people know about Vicero and what we're doing, and where we want to realize the vision of this potential therapy.
Nice. And I guess that's one of the beauties of being a small biotech. You've got the opportunity to wear multiple different hats at once. So
yes,
very good. So you've been at large pharma and small biotech. What do you think are the main differences between the two, and also in the way that leaders think in the two different types of businesses?
You know, it's a really interesting question, and I thought a lot about this because I think great leadership is great leadership. So regardless of company size, leadership is about making great decisions, including setting the strategy, enabling and empowering your team and colleagues, managing risk, and listening. I think the differences between a biotech and a large pharma is really driven by the scope of the business and the stakeholders. So when you think about large pharma, leaders in large pharma must consider broad portfolio implications and operate at a significantly broader scale. You know, they're playing in multiple different geographies, multiple different disease areas, and I know some biotechs are absolutely as well. But it's a different size of the business. And in contrast, biotech leadership means playing what I say is closer to the net, with different investor relationships and navigating potential make or break events, and as the portfolio advances. And so, you know, the risk profiles are different, and I think that's what leads very different leadership tendencies across biopharma and pharmaceuticals and biotech. So the environments create different risk profiles, but it's high risk either way. And so that said, I've seen great leadership relentless focus on patients' needs and intense passion to deliver for patients, both at big pharma, at BMS, and also at biotech. And I guess the core commitment to patients and the elements of great leadership transcend the organizational size. So, there are people who like the broader pharmaceutical, big pharma, worldwide businesses, and there's people who like to play close to the net and at the forefront of innovation and squarely focused there. But I think great leadership is great leadership.
Very good. And I know one of the topics that you were keen to speak about was mentorship. Were there any specific mentors that helped shape your career, and why is mentorship so important to you as well?
I'm going to start with the second part of that question first, and that is that, when I was at BMS, we put a large focus on leadership and leadership development, and part of that was that as you progress in your career, you realize, and you move from being an individual contributor to a leader of people and a leader of teams, the impact that you have for the business, for the organization, for patients is less about your personal output, and it's more about how you empower people to do their best and enable them to bring what they can to the table. So by focusing on enabling others, you really create the greatest impact for the organization. And you do that through mentoring and leading your teams, but also mentoring and leading other people. And I've had the fortune of having great bosses and mentors, and most of my bosses remain my mentors today, which is really fantastic. I'm in touch with most of the people that I worked with across the years, and I've got to learn from absolutely some of the best. I learned many different things. Different bosses taught me different distinct skills, such as how to think big and how to turn a vision into a tight operating plan, how to lead with my heart as well as my head. And one of the most important, one of the first things I learned from my first manager at BMS was the importance of asking questions and listening. So there have been many people who have mentored and inspired me, but their collective and most valuable lesson was showing me that with respect and trust, a team can overcome challenges and achieve far more than they ever thought possible.
Yeah, I love that. And this is a question we always finish with on the BioHub. I know I wanted to pre-warn you just to have a think on this one, but if you were to have dinner with 3 people, past or present, who would they be and why? They don't necessarily need to be biotech innovators, although they can if you like. But yeah, 3 people for dinner.
So my answer is not going to be biotech innovators, but I do have to say that, when you have a long career in life sciences, you get to meet absolutely fascinating people. And I've had the fortune of having both lunch and dinner with a Nobel laureate in Dr. Baruch Blumberg, who was the person who discovered the hepatitis B virus. And so when we were launching a product called Baraclude or entecavir in China, he came to that product launch, and I had the good fortune of sitting next to him and talking to him about what he's done for patients and for science and all of that. So that, those kinds of experiences are just one of the amazing things from working in this area. But when I thought about your question, there really was only one answer for me, and it's going to be 4 people. Sorry, it's not 3 people.
That's fine.
But it's my grandparents. So my mother is British, and both her mother and her father served in World War II. My grandfather was actually one of Churchill's generals, and my grandmother was a group officer for the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, which is just incredible for, a woman to do back in the day. On my father's side, I never met my grandfather, so I'd like to do that. And my grandmother grew up in Milwaukee. She was born in 1896, and she lived to be 99 years old. So I can only imagine what that dinner party would be like with the 4 of them, the 5 of us, I guess, sitting around the table. And I would love the opportunity to learn more from them and about each of them. And also to say thank you for everything they've done for me to let me be who I am.
Awesome. I love that. There's 3 or 4 terrific answers there.
I had to do 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Fine. Well, look, thanks so much for coming on, Alison. I think just hearing a little bit more about how it is in an early stage biotech, you know, how the advancements in fundraising and the pipelines coming along is really interesting to know. So yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Yeah.